Hello and welcome back to the Sharlayan Forum. My name is Chris, and today I wanted to do a quick video just sort of talking about some of the reasons that I'm excited about Dawntrail, which is now just 1 week away from early access launch, which is insane to think about. I remember in a previous video I said that these next few months are going to go very quickly, and I was right. The hour is now upon us, and it feels like it was just yesterday that we were seeing the first teasers. So just a really quick informal video this week. Just wanted to sort of talk about why I think that Dawntrail might be the most exciting Final Fantasy XIV expansion that we've had to date. Up first is obviously the graphical update. I think that we're looking down the barrel of something that's going to change the way that this game feels forever. This new approach to the style, this new look, this new coat of paint, it's making the entire game feel a little bit more refreshed. We're looking at something that almost feels like a new game in some respects, and it's something that I think is going to have wide sweeping effects on the player base as a whole. You know, we've seen the videos and screenshots, but of course it's hard to say that these things do the updates justice. A lot of people who played it at the media tour said that playing it and seeing it in front of them on a screen, it felt completely different than what they've seen in the footage or even in the benchmark. And so this level of excitement, I think, for just the sheer look of the game is something that I've never seen before. And I think that it's going to have a profound effect on the player base as a whole. Number two, I think just the sheer amount of content on offer in Dawntrail is going to be mind-blowing. We have to think about the fact that we've had 10 years of content development for Final Fantasy XIV at this point, and so many different types of content come and go, and some has stuck around, and some has been developed on, and some has been kind of left behind. But when we're looking at the list of things that are coming in Dawntrail, it's really staggering. I mean, we've got MSQ, we've got side quests, obviously things like Hildebrand, we've got trials, Unreal Trials, Extreme Trials, Savage Raids, Regular Raids, Ultimate Raids, the 24-man Echoes of Vana'diel raid. We've got 2 new jobs coming, plus Beastmaster. We've got new dungeons, Cosmic Exploration, the new Shades Triangle Field Zone. We've got Variant and Criterion Dungeon. We've got Blue Mage updates, Gold Saucer updates, PvP updates, new zones, new hunts, and deep dungeon updates. I mean, there's just so much coming that it's going to be impossible, I think, to understand how much content is going to be packed into this expansion until it all starts to hit. You know, we've had all of these disparate parts and different expansions over time, but now we're getting it all packed into one expansion with all new versions. And I think that that amount of content is going to be a booster shot into this game, where Endwalker sort of felt like they focused more on the story than the content and wrapping up the Hydaelyn and Zodiark saga, which I think is fine. I think that every game with a story like that kind of needs its moment to walk when it's been running for 10 years. And now I feel like they're about to hit the ground running again with a whole new thing. And having all of this content on offer, I think, is going to be invaluable for keeping people engaged. Number 3, of course, is this new story. You know, 1.0 to Endwalker, it was an amazing story. The Hydaelyn and Zodiark saga was something that most people will agree was probably one of the best overarching framework stories that we've ever had in a Final Fantasy game, if not an RPG as a whole, let alone MMOs. And there were some beats in there that were truly unbelievable. You know, the Heavensward story, the Shadowbringers story, the Endwalker story. Some of these parts of these stories, I think, are up there with some of the best game scenario writing I've ever seen. And so it's hard it's hard to feel like they're going to follow it up in a way that's good, but I have a lot of faith in the writers of this game. I have a lot of faith in Yoshi P and the team. While this story might not have the stakes or the weight that the Hydaelyn and Zodiark story had, especially going into Endwalker, that this is going to be the beginning of something new and fresh, and it's going to revitalize this game in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. You know, with the beginning of a new story, we also get the option to have a lot of moving pieces that we're starting to set up. You know, we can look backwards and look at things that happened in ARR that slowly evolved and only really came to fruition in Endwalker. You know, we have this history of these extremely long, protracted ideas being drawn out over the courses of these expansions. Anybody who thinks that this is going to be just a joyful romp through a jungle zone is sorely mistaken. I think that we're going to start to see new pieces be set up so that they can start knocking them down in 8.0 and 9.0 and onward. I think that a lot of people have a ton of curiosity about how they're going to follow up with the Hydaelyn and Zodiark saga. And, Yoshi P has said in interviews that you're going to want to be familiar with the Convocation of 14, and you're going to want to understand the Ancients a little better going into Dawntrail. So I think that we're going to see some seriously interesting chess pieces start to get set up here that are going to slowly start moving around on the board the more that we get into Dawntrail. Number 4, I think, is the communication and the attitude of the development team right now is something that I personally don't remember ever seeing in the time that I've played 14. They've said that their main goal with 7.0's design right now is to target changes in combat and encounter design. Change things like, boss hitbox sizes, change up the mechanics, change up the idea of how they approach making mechanics, reducing the amount of stress-free environment, trying to introduce more stakes into the combat design of the game, which I think is a great thing to do. And then, they've said in interviews that sort of 7.2 and onward into 8.0, they're going to be targeting job changes to try and solidify the identity of a lot of these jobs, try to reduce homogenization. And I think that breaking it up like this and finding ways to change both of these issues, which have both become pain points in the community, is an awesome way to re-solidify your commitment to the game as a developer. I think they're making all the right choices in terms of approaching how they change this content. I think that doing it all at once might be a little bit of too much of a system shock and people might sort of bounce off. And so this idea of changing the content first and then the jobs, I think is a really good way to do it. I think that a lot of people wish that the jobs had changed first, since that's the interface point with the game. But I think that it's important to remember that yes, jobs pervade everything, but so does encounter design. In a game where fighting is the main, that's the main content, changing encounter design is going to fundamentally change how everything happens. In some respects, this is sort of a return to form. There should be things that are difficult to do, and there should be things that are hard, but they're also trying, I feel, to integrate more modern sensibilities into this design, where you're having things like, the combo button changes, where certain skills will turn into other skills just to reduce the amount of, not necessarily stress or bloat, but just to make things flow better, to consolidate and understand jobs a little bit easier. And I think that those changes combined with the content changes are going to be a massive revitalization for this game. And number 5, I think, is just my personal points of excitement. I don't recall ever being this excited for an expansion, which is really weird, because I remember when I first saw the very first reveal teaser trailer, I sort of had this feeling of meh, I wasn't super excited. I was still sort of stuck on the Hydaelyn and Zodiark arc. I was sort of not willing to buy into the idea that this was going to be something that felt like a good follow-up to this experience. But as we've gone forward and I've learned more and I've seen more from the developers and I've just heard what they've been saying and I've seen all the content that they have to offer, I can't help but feel like this is really going to be, for me at least, the best Final Fantasy XIV experience I've ever had. And I think a lot of it has to do with the graphical update as well, because you're making things that I've been looking at for 10 years feel new again, which is an astounding feat that I don't know that any MMO I've ever played has done. Like World of Warcraft did their graphical update where they updated a lot of the models, but it still felt like, wow, it still felt like the same thing I'd been playing for 15 years at that point. And now just something feels different about Dawntrail. I can't really put into words. It's this X factor thing where stuff that I've been looking at feels completely new. And I'm like that kid in the candy shop. I'm logging into ARR for the first time again, and I'm super excited for it. Viper and Pictomancer seem like they're extremely well-designed jobs. Obviously I haven't played them, but watching all the footage and looking at all the tooltips and trying to understand them, it really feels like these two jobs are sort of where the rest of the job should be heading. Everything feels extremely cohesive. It feels like they're simple enough to understand, but they have a lot of optimization and a lot of challenge built into their kit that you can put on yourself. It feels like the floor is high enough that anybody will be able to play them, but the ceiling is high enough that people will get a lot of joy out of optimizing them. And I think that that attitude is where all jobs naturally should land. The new story, I think, feels really intriguing. It doesn't feel like it's too deep yet, but like I said, I feel like that's probably going to change. The amount of content that we have coming is absolutely mind-blowing. And also just the style of that content is something that I'm really interested in. I'm an old Final Fantasy XI player, so the idea of having Echoes of Vana'diel as our 24-man is super awesome to me. I can't wait to see how that crosses over. The design of the Arcadian raid tier being like a tournament arc is something that I'm super excited for. I love that. And just the total vibe of this like tropical foreign land, I think it's a vibe that clicks in my brain. There's something about that setting which feels very fun and feels very cool and feels very exploratory. And I think that that's sort of the capstone of the feeling that I have towards Dawntrail, is that it feels like this is a new exploratory adventure. They're changing the way they're doing things. They're changing the way the game looks. They're changing how much content is delivered and how rewards are delivered. And it feels like this is the season of exploration for Final Fantasy XIV. We've had the same setup basically for 10 years, and it feels like now we're getting something new. And I think that that's super exciting. So that's my scatterbrained, disorganized thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment down below. Leave a like if you feel like I've earned it. Give me a subscribe if you feel like I've earned that. And yeah, we're just 1 week away, which is insane. Make sure you're prepping everything you need to prep. Do your challenge log, get your Wondrous Tales set up, and I'll see you guys in Dawntrail. Bye.